See, this is what I did for last class. So since the scorpion kind of reminds me of Scorpio, I put little constellations in the background with like Virgo or Capricorn or what have you. And then I did little planets. So totally up to you. Since I'm gonna put this here, I'm just going to keep shading this version. So if you're using color, I would pick a light color for your body, a medium sort of color that kind of goes a little bit darker than your first for your shadow. So let's focus on that. And I'm going to use a regular pen, not a Sharpie. I repeat, not a Sharpie. And I'm going to zoom in here. To kind of capture that curvature in the body, I would highly recommend kind of doing like a cross contour kind of shading styles. So let me bring this up in autofocus. And when I say cross contour, it's literally moving with the body. So I have a really light scratch here, but then I'm going to kind of mimic my angle pattern here. Here's a better way of showing it. This is a bigger shape. So I have that diagonal repeating this line, and now I'm going to go the other way. And it's like I'm making a bunch of little angular marks. It's really going to help make this body look more 3D. And you can do this with your colored pen. Just start with that lighter color if you are working with color. And if you happen to decide to work with colored pencil, it would be a lighter colored pencil too. And this is going to change as I'm moving around the body of my scorpion. Here we go. Here's a better picture. There we go. See how it goes up, and then the underbelly goes this way. So this is a way that you can kind of get, what do you call it? Flat planes to look more three-dimensional as well. So just a heads up on that. Now we're going to do the tail, but we're going to change our line. You see how the line is going? It's kind of converging into the bottom of the segment here, and then it branches out as it gets towards the top of your segment. Kind of goes. We're doing that to kind of emphasize that that kind of three-dimensional tube-like structure of each segment. So there's a reason why I'm doing it like that. Keep using that light color if you're using color, obviously. We're not ready to go into our shadow yet. We're literally doing the filler shade here. We're going to do the same thing with our tail. So here I am using cross contour shading to try to mimic the movement of shadow across the body. So the pedipalps, I am going to make sure that my line is slightly curved because the pedipalps are kind of round. For the eyes, I'm going to do my darkest dark. Now, if you want your legs to be a darker brown or a darker tan, feel free to switch over to that different color. For me, I'm just going to add more pressure to my pen. Now, if you're using a micron pen, you can stick to your really thin nub Just make sure your strokes are closer together. My moon is here, so my shadow is going to be on the opposite side. You see how I'm adding an additional layer right here? If you're using a micron pen, stick with your thinner nub and just gradually add. If you're using color, stick with that light color and just add an additional layer for your shadow and see how it looks. You might have to switch over to the darker one, but let's play it by ear here. You make that choice after you try it with the original color. Sometimes even with color, if you add an additional layer, it still looks like a shadow. It's not a very extreme shadow, but it's there. And if you're doing pen like me, just add on top of your original line and you should be good to go with light pressure. As you're doing that, I am going to erase some of this so you can see better and see what is actually going on here. Because I got some of my pencil line competing with my pen line. So it looks darker than what it really is. So while you're filling in your little dude, I'm just going to very gently clean up my pencil line so you can actually see my ink markings better. And we call when we move our pen in the direction of where your surface is going, we call that cross contour, I believe, because you're literally following the shape of the shadow and how the shadow moves. It's tricky because you have to think about how things are moving and how the animal's anatomy is working, but it's worth it. It's worth the hassle. And I think you can kind of see what's going on here a little more clearly. See how feather light this is? Now, if you have micron pen, getting that feather light there is going to be a lot easier than if you're using a regular pen like I am. I've been doing this for a while, so. Alright, let's go up into the tail. I'm doing this so you can see my line structure more. I would highly advise waiting until your ink completely dries before you clean up your line. If you choose to clean up your line, I would wait to do so until everything's fully dry. Sometimes it's good to just step away from your drawing and squint your eyes a little bit in order to see the shadows coming together. If you're way up close, like I am in my dock cam, it's kind of harder to see those shadows merging together. I feel like right here I need a little more shadow underneath my claw here, now that I'm away from my drawing. And maybe some right here to help kind of make that claw pop. All right, so if you're doing color, I would kind of use your lighter color for your sand. I know this background's a little black. That's an understatement, right? But it's just to give us an idea of what to color or draw. I would do your base color of your sand, that light color that you've chosen, maybe like a tan, very 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 light. And for your shadow, I would switch over to that medium color that I recommended you grab before we started the shading process for this part, for your shadow area underneath your tail, underneath your claw. But the sandhill in its entirety, I would go with a light color and then I would shift over to the darker color for your secondary layer. For me, or a micron pen, use your really thin nub to kind of feather in your filler shade. And I would use the same type of pressure with a colored pen or a colored pencil, just really light. Butterfly kissing it. And see how I'm moving in the direction of the sandhill? It's curving. So is my shadow line, and so is my filler shade. It's really going to emphasize the movement of that rolling hill. I'm leaving space between each stroke. I'm holding my pen loosely, and I'm forcing myself to go light by holding on the end here. Only when I have my entire hill kind of filler shaded in will I worry about these parts. Now the only reason mine were done beforehand is because my last class I actually started on that to help teach them about casting shadow. That's where an object casts shadow upon a surface of another object. So that's the only reason I did that ahead of time. Just go light with your strokes. When you go into layer 2, go light. Like you can use that brown, but just make sure that you have spaces of that lighter color popping up through your secondary layer. And you can do that by spacing your line a little further apart. Any questions on that part? It's tricky, but if you take your time, you'll be fine.